They dragged her barefoot through the village square at dawn, rope burns bleeding around her wrists, her swollen belly pressed against the torn fabric of her dress. The elders had already chosen the stones. Round, smooth ones pulled from the riverbed, the kind that kills slowly. But what the village didn't know was that the father of her unborn child wasn't human. And he was already there, standing in the shadows at the edge of the square, watching with eyes that had turned from silver to absolute black. When the first elder raised his arm, a voice split the morning air like a crack of thunder. "Throw one rock and this village burns to the last timber." The snow had fallen for 3 days without stopping, blanketing the forest between Ashwood Village and the northern mountains in silence so complete it felt like the world had ended. Thalia Whitmore walked the trapline her father had set before he died, checking for rabbits, her breath forming clouds in the frozen air. She was 23 years old, a seamstress by trade, the daughter of a gamekeeper who'd left her nothing but debts and a cottage that leaked when it rained. The villagers called her the Quiet One. Some days Thalia thought they'd forgotten she had a name at all. The steel trap was empty. So was the second. The third had been torn from its anchor. The chain snapped clean through as if something with impossible strength had pulled it apart. Blood trailed into the deeper woods, dark, almost black against the snow. Too much blood for a rabbit. Thalia should have turned back, should have run to the village and told Elder Dorian, should have done anything except follow the trail deeper into the forest where the pine trees grew so thick the snow couldn't reach the ground. But she'd spent 23 years being invisible, being careful, being exactly what everyone expected. And something in her chest, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, whispered, "Not today." She found him at the base of an ancient oak, half buried in snow. At first, she thought he was dead. His skin was the color of marble, pale in a way that had nothing to do with cold and everything to do with the absence of something essential. His dark hair was matted with ice. His clothes, what remained of them, were shredded, but it was the chains that made Thalia's hands shake as she knelt beside him. Silver chains, thick as her wrist, wrapped around his torso. Where the metal touched his skin, the flesh had turned black. Burned, blistering, the smell was copper and char and something ancient that made her teeth ache. "Please," he whispered, and his eyes opened. Silver, not gray, not blue. Silver, like polished metal, like the edge of a blade catching moonlight. "Don't scream." Thalia didn't scream. Her hands were already moving, fumbling for the bolt cutters she'd brought to repair the traps, the ones her father had used for breaking through frozen locks. "Who did this to you?" "Hunters." His voice was barely sound, more breath than word. "My own court. Doesn't matter. You need to leave. When they come back, they'll find you gone." Thalia positioned the cutters around the first link. "Hold still." The silver burned her palms through her gloves. She bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood and squeezed. The chain snapped. Then another, each one falling away like a curse being lifted piece by piece. When the last chain hit the snow, he collapsed forward. Thalia caught him, or tried to. He was heavier than he looked, dense in a way that defied his lean frame. They went down together in the snow, and Thalia found herself with a stranger's head on her shoulder, his breath cold against her neck. "Thank you," he said. 2 words, but the way he said them, it sounded like a vow. "Can you walk?" "In a moment. The silver needs time. My cottage is half a mile south. Can you make it that far?" He lifted his head. Those silver eyes studied her face with an intensity that should have frightened her, should have sent her running. Instead, Thalia felt something in her chest crack open, like ice breaking on the river in spring. "What's your name?" "Thalia. Thalia Whitmore." "Thalia," he said it like he was tasting each syllable, memorizing the shape of it. "I'm Lucian." "Well, Lucian," she pulled one of his arms over her shoulder, bracing against his weight. "Let's get you somewhere warm before you freeze to death." A sound came from his chest. It took Thalia a moment to realize it was laughter, dry and rough, and tinged with something dark. "I haven't been warm in 643 years, he said, "but I'll follow you anywhere." The cottage was small, one room with a stone fireplace, a bed covered in quilts Thalia had sewn herself, a table scarred from years of her father cleaning game. She laid Lucian on the bed and built up the fire until the room glowed with heat. He didn't shiver, didn't move toward the warmth. Just watched her with those impossible eyes as she heated water and found clean cloth and the salve her mother had made from herbs before the fever took her. "You're not afraid," he said. Not a question, an observation. Thalia wrung out the cloth in the hot water, her hands steady. "Should I be?" I'm a vampire, Thalia, 643 years old. I've killed more men than you've met in your lifetime. I've ruled territories larger than your entire country. And right now, if I wanted to, I could tear out your throat before you could scream. She pressed the hot cloth to the silver burns on his chest. He hissed, jaw clenching. But you won't, Talia said calmly, because if you were going to hurt me, you would have done it in the forest. And because, she paused, meeting his eyes, because you said please. Monsters don't say please. Silence. Then slowly something in his face changed, softened. The sharp edges of his features somehow became less knife-like, more human. You're remarkable, he said quietly. I'm a seamstress from a village with 200 people who barely know my name. There's nothing remarkable about me. You cut silver chains with your bare hands to save a stranger bleeding in the snow. You brought a vampire into your home. You're cleaning wounds that would make grown men vomit. His hand caught hers, stopping her movement. His skin was cool, but not cold, not dead. You have no idea what you are, do you? Talia's heart was hammering, not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and looking down at the fall. What am I? Brave, Lucian said. Brave enough to make a 600-year-old vampire believe in mercy again. He stayed 3 weeks. The first week he slept most of the time, his body healing from the silver poisoning with an agonizing slowness that made Thalia realize even immortals could suffer. She changed his bandages, brought him broth made from the rabbit she finally caught, read to him from her father's old books about hunting and tracking and the names of stars. The second week, he started talking. He told her about the Crimson Court, the 12 vampire bloodlines that ruled the supernatural world. He told her about Ravenhold Castle, the fortress where he'd lived alone for 60 years. He told her about his sister, Isolde, who he'd exiled 312 years ago for wanting to enslave humanity. And he told her about the law that said vampires who formed attachments to humans faced execution. Not exile, execution. It's to protect the secrecy of our kind, he explained one night, sitting by the fire, his shirt open to let the last of the burns breathe. A vampire who loves a human becomes vulnerable, compromised. The court can't allow it. And what do you become? Talia asked from her place at the table, mending a shirt by candlelight. A liability. That's not what I asked. Lucian looked at her. The firelight caught the silver in his eyes, turning them to molten metal. Alive, he said softly. For the first time in 6 centuries, I become alive. The third week he kissed her. It was snowing again. Thalia stood at the window, watching the flakes fall, and Lucian came up behind her. Didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel the space between them humming with something electric. I should leave, he said. I know. If I stay, they'll come looking. They'll find you. I know. Thalia, she turned, looked up at him, at this impossible, beautiful, dangerous thing that had crashed into her small, invisible life and made her feel seen for the first time. I've spent my whole life being careful, she said, being quiet, being exactly what everyone expected. I don't want to be careful anymore. He kissed her like she was the first sunrise he'd seen in 600 years, like she was water and he was dying of thirst, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for longer than her entire bloodline had existed. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers, his hands cupping her face with a gentleness that belied the strength she knew he possessed. This is going to break both of us, he whispered. Then let it, Talia said. I'm done being whole and alone. 3 weeks and 4 days after she found him in the snow, Lucian Ravencrest kissed her one last time and walked out into the dawn. He didn't look back. Thalia watched him disappear into the forest and felt something inside her chest shatter and reform into a shape she didn't recognize. She didn't know she was already pregnant. She wouldn't know for another month. And by the time she did, it was already too late to run. The rope cut into Thalia's wrists with every breath. The morning frost made the cobblestones slick beneath her bare feet, and the swollen curve of her belly pressed against the wooden post they tied her to. The square was packed. 200 faces, some she'd known her entire life, watching her like she was a spectacle. A warning. A lesson in what happened when you broke the old laws. Elder Dorian stood before her, white beard flowing, walking stick of blackthorn planted in the ground like a judge's gavel. His nephew Petru, broad as a barn door, had been the one to drag her from her cottage. Father Laszlo clutched his Bible like a weapon, eyes burning with righteous fury. Behind them, arranged in wicker baskets that had been oiled and prepared for exactly this purpose, were the stones, round, smooth, river-worn, each one chosen for weight and trajectory. The kind that would break bones before they broke skin. The kind that would take hours, not minutes. Thalia's baby kicked, hard, frantic, as if the child inside her could sense what was coming. Thalia Whitmore, Dorian's voice carried across the square like a bell tolling. You stand accused of fornication outside the bond of marriage, of carrying a bastard child, of defiling the moral fabric of this village. Talia's jaw clenched. Her hands, tied behind the post, formed fists. The law is clear, Dorian continued. The punishment is clear. Do you confess? Every face in the square waited. Some looked away. Most didn't. Old Marta from the bakery, who'd gossiped about Thalia's swelling belly. Young Jacob, who'd helped her father fix the cottage roof once. The blacksmith. The miller. The women she'd sewn dresses for. The men who'd never bothered to learn her name. All of them. Watching. Waiting for her shame. Thalia lifted her chin, met Dorian's eyes with a steadiness that made something flicker in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe, or the first spark of fear. I confess to carrying a child, she said, and her voice didn't shake. I do not confess to a crime. Loving someone is not a crime. A ripple went through the crowd. Dorian's expression hardened into stone. The law does not concern itself with love, girl. Who is the father? Thalia pressed her lips together. She would not answer. Could not. Because the truth was so much worse than anything they imagined. And if they knew, the stones would come faster. Very well, Dorian turned to the crowd. The punishment, as written in the elder laws, is death by stoning. May God have mercy on her soul. He reached into the nearest basket, selected a stone. Gray, round, the size of a man's fist, tested its weight in his palm. Thalia's baby kicked again. She closed her eyes, thought of Lucian's face, his silver eyes, the way he'd held her like she was something precious, the way he'd said her name like a prayer. I'm sorry, she thought. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Dorian drew back his arm, and that was when the air changed. A pressure drop, like the moment before a summer thunderstorm when the birds go silent and the leaves turn their silver undersides to the sky. The temperature plummeted so fast that breath became visible. The morning sun seemed to dim, as though something had stepped between it and the earth. Dorian's arm froze mid-throw. Not by choice. His muscles simply stopped obeying him. From the shadows at the eastern edge of the square, a figure emerged. He moved without sound, without hurry, with the absolute certainty of something that had never in its existence needed to rush. His long black coat moved as if underwater. His dark hair fell past his jaw, and his skin was pale the way marble is pale, the way moonlight is pale, the way things are pale when blood serves a different purpose than warming the surface. His eyes were silver, not gray, not blue, silver like polished metal, like the edge of a blade catching light. He walked to the edge of the circle they'd drawn in chalk around Thalia's post and stopped. 231 people stared at him. None recognized his face, but something in their bones recognized what he was. Children buried their faces in their parents' legs. Dogs whimpered and pressed against the ground. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Throw one rock. His voice was not loud, but it entered the air the way a blade enters flesh, clean and precise. And this village burns to the last timber. Dorian's hand opened. The stone clattered to the cobblestones, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Who are you? Dorian's voice cracked on the last word. This is village business. You have no authority here. The stranger's silver eyes moved from Dorian to the crowd to the baskets of stones to Thalia, tied and bleeding and 6 months pregnant, or with her belly pressed against splintered wood. Something happened to his expression. The cold, ancient mask cracked. Just for a moment, just long enough for Thalia to see the fury beneath it. Fury so old and so deep it had its own gravity. I am Lucian Ravencrest, he said, and the name fell into the square like a stone into still water, sending ripples of recognition and terror through the crowd. I am the first of the blood, the oldest of the 12 bloodlines, and the woman you have tied to that post carries my child. The silence that followed was so complete that Thalia could hear her own heartbeat, and beneath it, impossibly, the heartbeat of the baby inside her. Lucian walked into the circle. The crowd parted for him the way flesh parts for a scalpel. He stopped before Thalia, and for one long moment, they simply looked at each other. His silver eyes softened, just a degree or two. the way steel softens near a forge. You came, Talia whispered. I told you I would. You said you couldn't. You said it was too dangerous. I lied. His hands reached for the ropes binding her wrists, and his fingers moved too fast for human eyes to track. The knots simply dissolved. I'm sorry I took so long. Talia's wrists were raw, bleeding. Lucian took her hands in his thumbs tracing the rope burns with infinite care. Warmth spread from his skin to hers. Not heat. Something else. Something that felt like comfort made physical. The pain receded. How? She asked. Blood magic. Very old, very forbidden. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm breaking quite a few laws for you today. Father Laszlo stepped forward, holding his Bible like a shield. His voice shook, but he forced the words out anyway. Blasphemy. Whatever you are, you have no dominion here. This woman sinned against the laws of God and the laws of this village. The punishment is righteous. Lucian turned his head slowly. Something happened to the air between them. It thickened, darkened, developed weight. Your laws, Lucian said softly, are the bleating of sheep who have forgotten there are wolves. His gaze swept the crowd. Every person it touched flinched. You bind a pregnant woman to a post. You gather stones to crush her body and the child within it. You call it righteousness, tradition, law. He took one step toward Laszlo. The priest stumbled backward. I have walked this earth for 643 years. I have seen empires rise and crumble to dust. I have watched plagues empty cities and wars reshape continents. And in all those centuries, the one constant I have found is this. He stopped. Let the silence stretch. The cruelest acts are always committed by those who believe they are righteous. Dorian slammed his walking stick against the cobblestones. The sound cracked through the square. This village has stood for 300 years on the strength of its laws. One outsider doesn't change that. Lucian looked at the elder the way you look at an insect crawling across your table. Not with anger, with something colder, dismissal. The acknowledgement that you could crush it, but it's not worth the effort. 300 years, he repeated. Then he raised one hand and pointed at the church steeple. I was here before your church had a foundation stone. The steeple began to vibrate. A low hum filled the air, resonating in teeth and bones and the hollow spaces of the skull. The iron bell began to swing on its own, tolling once, twice, 3 times, each ring deeper and darker than any sound it had ever made. The stones in the wicker baskets cracked down their centers, splitting apart like eggs, like the shells of something hatching. The crowd screamed, people dropped to their knees, hands pressed over ears, children sobbing, dogs howling. Lucian lowered his hand. The bell stopped. The vibration faded, leaving only the sound of 200 people trying to remember how to breathe. The next person who touches her, Lucian said into the ringing silence, will learn what 600 years of patience looks like when it finally ends. Talia gripped his arm. Her fingers dug into the fabric of his coat. Lucian, don't. This isn't what I wanted. He looked at her, the terrible, ancient coldness in his eyes thawed by another degree. What you wanted, he said gently, was to live in peace and raise our child. They denied you that. His hand covered hers. I am simply correcting the error. Petru was the first to move, young, strong, stupid in the way that strong young men often are, when they've never met anything stronger. He grabbed a cracked stone from the basket and hurled it. Not at Lucian, at Thalia. The stone never reached her. Lucian's hand came up with the casual inevitability of a closing door. He caught the stone an inch from Thalia's face. His fingers closed around it. When he opened his hand, dust poured out. The crowd's scream this time was different. Not surprise, terror, primal. The kind that comes from realizing your prey. Lucian crossed 12 feet of cobblestone in a single stride. He gripped Petru by the throat, lifted him off the ground with one arm, held him there, feet dangling, face purpling. She carries a child, Lucian said, and his voice had gone quiet. Soft, the way a knife is soft when it's sharp enough to cut without pressure. You threw a stone at a pregnant woman, at my child. Lucian, Talia's voice reached him across the square. Somehow, through the rage and the centuries of violence and the instinct to crush anything that threatened what was his. Don't kill him. Silence stretched between heartbeats. His fingers flexed. The tendons in Petru's throat shifted beneath Lucian's grip. Then, with visible effort, with the kind of control that comes from living long enough to know what happens when you lose it, Lucian released him. Petru crumpled, gasping, clutching his throat where 5 red marks were already blooming into bruises. "She saves your life," Lucian told him. His voice was still soft, still quiet. "Remember that. A pregnant woman you tried to murder showed you more mercy than you deserved." He walked back to Thalia, shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. It was heavy, lined with velvet, carrying his scent. Pine and cold stone and something metallic underneath, like old iron, like blood. "Can you walk?" Talia nodded. Her legs were shaking, but she could stand. She could move. "Then we walk." Dorian's voice stopped them. Old, cracked, but still trying to hold authority like a man clutching water. "You can't take her. If you leave, we'll track you down. We'll tell the authorities what you are, what she is, what that thing inside her is." Lucian stopped. He turned, and for the first time he let them see what lived behind the silver. His pupils elongated, became vertical slits. The silver brightened until it was nearly white, luminous, like the inside of a star. His lips pulled back, and they saw the fangs, long, curved, points designed for a purpose that every human instinct understood without translation. Several people fainted. Others ran. The square that had held 200 witnesses 10 minutes ago was emptying like water from a broken cup. "Tell them," Lucian said softly, and he smiled with those impossible teeth. "Tell everyone what I am, and then wait and see who comes looking." The smile widened. "I hope they send their bravest." He took Thalia's hand. His fingers laced through hers, gentle despite the strength she'd just seen him use to crush stone and lift grown men like children. "Come," he said. "Let me take you home." They walked out of Ashwood Village together, out of the square where Thalia had almost died, past the cottages where people she'd known her entire life pressed their faces to windows and watched her leave, past the bakery and the blacksmith and the mill, past the church with its cracked bell, past everything she'd ever known. Thalia didn't look back. They didn't speak until the village was swallowed by the dense pine forest that blanketed the mountainside. Lucian's coat dragged on the ground behind Thalia, collecting pine needles, but it was impossibly warm for a garment that had sat on a body with no heat of its own. "You're angry," Lucian said. "Of course I'm angry." Thalia pulled her hand free, stopped walking, turned to face him in the dappled forest light. "For 6 months I've been hiding this baby, terrified every single day. And you told me you couldn't come, that the laws of your kind forbade you from interfering in human affairs." "They do." "Then what was that back there?" He looked at her. In the shifting light through the pine branches, he looked less supernatural and more like a man carrying a weight he'd never expected to bear. "The laws of my kind forbid revealing ourselves to human settlements. They forbid siring children with mortals. They forbid forming attachments that could compromise our secrecy." He paused. Something cracked in his expression. "I have broken every one of those laws for you. And now what? Your people will come for you. And my people—" Talia's voice broke. "I can never go back." "I know. I had a life there, Lucian. It wasn't much. It was small and quiet and mostly invisible. But it was mine. I know. And now it's gone. Because of you. Because of this." Her hands went to her belly. The baby kicked, as if responding to her distress. "Because we couldn't stay away from each other." Lucian stepped closer, slowly, giving her every chance to back away. She didn't. "There is a place we can go," he said quietly, "beyond the mountains, past the Carpathian Ridge. A fortress that has been in my bloodline since before your village existed. Warded, hidden, protected by enchantments older than any law either of our peoples recognize." His hand rose, hesitant, and finally settled on her belly. The baby kicked against his palm, his breath caught. It happened every time. This impossible thing, this miracle of life moving beneath his hand. "We can be safe there," he whispered. "All 3 of us." Thalia covered his hand with hers. "A half-vampire child, Lucian. Your people will see it as an abomination. Mine will see it as a monster. Our child is neither." His silver eyes met hers, and there was something fierce in them. Something that looked like love, but burned hotter. "Our child is something new. Something that hasn't existed in recorded history. And I will burn every throne and tear apart every council before I let anyone harm a single hair on her head." "Her?" A small smile touched his lips, the first real smile she'd seen since he'd appeared in the square. "Her. I don't know how I know, but I do." Talia felt tears on her face. She didn't remember starting to cry. The fear and the adrenaline and the sheer enormity of what had just happened crashed over her all at once, and she found herself sobbing. not the quiet kind. The ugly, gasping, full-body kind that she'd been holding back for 6 months. Lucian's arms came around her, careful of her belly, gentle despite the strength she'd seen him use. One hand on the back of her head, fingers threading through her tangled hair. You came, Talia said against his chest. That's what matters. When it counted, you came. I will always come. His voice was soft, absolute. Whether the entire world stands between us or just a village with stones. Whether my own kind hunt me or yours condemn me. Whether it's 600 years of law or 6 months of silence, I will always come for you. They stood like that in the forest, holding each other, two impossible things that shouldn't exist together. A vampire king and a seamstress, an immortal and a mortal, a love that had broken every rule written, and between them, protected by Thalia's heartbeat and Lucian's ancient blood, their daughter turned and kicked and grew. The hunters found them at dusk, in a narrow gorge where a stream ran red with iron-rich minerals. The water looked like blood. There were 12 of them, tactical clothing, silver crossbows, professional, organized. The kind of hunters who tracked supernatural creatures for money, not morality. Their leader stepped onto the path 50 paces ahead, tall, blonde hair cropped close, a face assembled from angles and edges. He carried his crossbow with the casual ease of someone who'd never missed a shot. Lucian Ravencrest, the man said, and his smile had nothing warm in it. We've been looking for you. Lucian positioned himself between the hunters and Thalia with a fluidity that made the movement look choreographed. Without his coat, in just his black shirt and boots, he looked leaner, more dangerous. His body shifted into something Talia recognized from the village square. Battle stance, a predator's geometry. Cassian Tauren, Lucian's voice carried no surprise, only weariness. The last time I saw you, your father was trying to put a silver bolt through my throat in Prague. That was 1987. Cassian's smile widened. Times have changed. Your methods haven't. No. Cassian's eyes moved from Lucian to Thalia, and something flickered in his expression. Not quite sympathy, but not quite hatred either. We brought 12, for one vampire and a pregnant woman. You must be very afraid of us. The Crimson Court is paying in blood diamonds for your head. Your own people want you dead, your majesty. Cassian loaded the mockery thick on the title. And the woman's also, the hunter clans have their own price on her. Carrying a vampire's child violates treaties older than your bloodline. The woman, Lucian said, and his voice dropped to something that made Thalia's skin prickle, has a name, Thalia, and the child she carries is not a violation. It is my heir. A ripple went through the hunters. Cassian's smile faltered. Your heir? The vampire king claims a half-blood mongrel as heir to the first seat of the Crimson Court. I claim this child is mine, Lucian said, and I will defend her accordingly. Cassian raised his crossbow. The 11 other hunters spread in a formation. From the trees above, Thalia heard the faint clicks of more crossbow mechanisms being armed. Last chance, Cassian said, and the humor had drained from his voice entirely. Surrender the woman, we'll make it quick. Painless, the court only wants the child. Once it's gone, you can negotiate your return. Pretend this never happened. Talia's hand went to her belly, protective, defiant. The baby kicked hard, as if she too was preparing to fight. Lucian's silver eyes went white. What happened next, Thalia would replay in her memory for the rest of her life. Not because it was violent, though it was. Not because it was fast, though it was faster than anything human eyes could properly track. But because in that moment, standing on a mountain path with 12 crossbows aimed at her belly, she saw what Lucian Ravencrest actually was when he stopped pretending to be something a human woman could love. He moved, not walked, not ran, moved, the way lightning moves, the way an avalanche moves, with the total commitment of a force that has no option of stopping. Cassian fired. The silver bolt cut the air where Lucian had been standing, but Lucian was no longer standing there. He was already among them. The first hunter went down without a sound. Lucian's hand closed around her crossbow, crushed it, and the same motion carried through to her jaw. The second hunter fired. The bolt grazed Lucian's shoulder, opening silver-burned flesh that hissed and smoked. Lucian caught the man by the throat and threw him 30 feet into the gorge. Bolts rained from the tree line. 8 hidden shooters firing in sequence. Lucian wove between them with a dancer's precision, each bolt missing by inches. He ripped a sapling from the ground and hurled it into the canopy. 2 shooters crashed through the branches. But 12 against 1 was not sustainable. A bolt caught him in the left arm, another in the thigh. Silver burned in his flesh, slowing him, weakening him. Lucian snarled and kept fighting. Thalia watched, paralyzed, as the man she loved tore through an army with his bare hands while Silver ate through his body. She could see him slowing, each movement costing more than the last. The Silver was working, draining his strength, dulling his speed. Cassian circled behind Lucian, reloading with practiced hands. His next shot would be the heart. Thalia could see the angle, see the trajectory, see the certainty on Cassian's face. She picked up a stone, not from a wicker basket, just a stone, jagged and heavy from the mountain path. She'd never thrown anything with intent to harm in her life. Her father had taught her to hunt rabbits, not men. But her arm drew back, and the stone flew true. It struck Cassian Torin in the temple, hard enough to split the skin above his eye, hard enough to make him stagger. His shot went wide. The bolt buried itself in a pine trunk instead of Lucian's heart. Lucian used a half-second reprieve to close the distance. His hand closed around Cassian's crossbow, and this time he didn't just crush the weapon. He drove the broken stock into the ground like a stake, pinning Cassian's coat to the earth. "Yield," Lucian growled, blood streaming from silver wounds, his eyes blazing white. "Yield or I end this." Cassian looked at his shattered weapon. His scattered team, the Vampire King standing over him, trailing smoke from half a dozen silver burns, and the pregnant woman 10 paces away, holding another stone. "This isn't over," Cassian spat. "The next time you aim a weapon at my family." Lucian leaned close, his voice soft enough that Thalia barely caught the words. "I won't leave anyone to carry a message back." He stepped away. Cassian scrambled to his feet, yanked his coat free, and whistled. The remaining hunters, battered, several unconscious, regrouped with desperate efficiency. They retreated into the trees without another word. Lucian stood on the mountain path, swaying. The silver burns on his arms and legs hissed faintly, thin curls of acrid smoke rising from each wound. His shirt was torn in 6 places, each tear edged with blackened, blistered flesh. Thalia dropped the stone and ran to him. He caught her with one arm. The other hung at his side where a bolt had punched clean through the muscle. "You threw a rock at a hunter," he said, and there was something in his voice that might have been awe. "I threw a rock at a man who was about to kill you. There's a difference." His laugh was strained, wet with pain. "You are the most terrifying woman I have ever met, and I once negotiated with Catherine the Great." Thalia pulled his arm across her shoulders, taking his weight. He was heavier than she remembered, dense, like stone. "Can you walk?" "The silver needs to come out first." He gestured to the bolt still embedded in his thigh. "If it stays, the burning spreads." Thalia looked at the wound. The flesh around the bolt was black and smoking. The shaft was barbed. "This is going to hurt." "Everything worth doing hurts." His silver eyes found hers. They were dimming now, the white glow fading as his strength ebbed. "You taught me that." She gripped the bolt, counted to 3, and pulled. The sound Lucian made was between a growl and a scream. Inhuman. Ionized. The bolt came free, trailing black blood in silver fragments. The wound immediately began to close, but is slower than it should have. The poison still working. When the last bolt came out of his arm, he collapsed backward, breathing in ragged gasps that didn't need air, but couldn't stop taking it. "How far to Ravenhold?" Thalia asked. "Too far. The silver poisoning will take hours to clear." He pulled an obsidian pendant from beneath his shirt, carved with symbols that pulsed with faint light. "Emergency transport, direct to Ravenhold. It only works once. And the journey?" He hesitated. "It's brutal for mortals." "Do it." Lucian pressed the pendant to the ground and spoke a word that wasn't a word, something older than language. The obsidian cracked. Light poured from the fracture. Not warm light, cold light, the color of a new moon. The ground folded like paper. Lucian's arms closed around Thalia, one hand on her belly, and the world inverted. 3 seconds lasted an eternity. Thalia felt her body turn inside out, felt her heartbeat skip and stutter, felt the baby inside her scream without sound. Then stone beneath her feet, cold air, torchlight. They stood in a vast hall, the ceiling lost in shadow 60 feet above. Stone pillars carved with spiral and crescent symbols lined the walls. The floor was black marble veined with silver, and it reflected the torches like a dark mirror. "Ravenhold," Lucian breathed. Then his legs buckled, and he collapsed onto the marble floor. his body finally surrendering to the silver that had been eating through his system since the ambush. Thalia worked through the night. She found the apothecary chamber on her third try, grabbed armfuls of bottles and jars, and brought them back to Lucian's still body in the Great Hall. The silver burn salve hissed when she applied it, drawing liquid poison to the surface. She wiped it away and worked methodically, wound by wound, while the baby yicked steadily inside her, a reminder that she had to save them both. When she poured the blood restoration tonic between Lucian's lips, his throat worked reflexively. She sat back and waited, one hand on her belly, the other on his chest. Slowly, color returned to his face. The black veins retreated, his fingers twitched. And then Lucian Ravencrest opened his silver eyes and looked up at the woman who had saved him for the second time in his existence. "You found the apothecary," he said, his voice a dry rasp. Thalia burst into tears, not the quiet kind, the ugly, gasping kind that she hadn't allowed herself since the village square. She pressed her face against his chest and sobbed so hard the sound echoed through the vast hall. Lucian's arms came up around her, weak, trembling, still healing. "But there, you came," Thalia said against his chest, the words she'd been holding back for 6 months finally breaking free. "When it counted, you came. I will always come," he whispered into her hair. "For you, for her, always." They stayed like that on the cold marble floor, clinging to each other, until the baby kicked hard enough to make them both gasp. "The child is hungry," Thalia said, pulling back and wiping her face. "And so am I." Lucian sat up slowly, testing his body. The wounds had closed, leaving faint silver scars. He flexed his hands, rolled his shoulders, strength returning. "Come," he said, offering his hand. "Let me show you our home." Ravenhold was austere but beautiful. Clean corridors, carved stone walls. Every room had a hearth that lit itself when Lucian passed. The kitchen was stocked with preserved foods, and a spring-fed channel provided fresh water. Thalia cooked simple stew while Lucian watched, and when she sat at the table to eat, with him across from her, not eating but present, it felt like the finest meal she'd ever had. "You still don't eat," she observed. "I don't require food, but the smell." His silver eyes tracked her movements. "It reminds me of something I can't place. A memory before the memory." After the meal, Lucian showed her the upper chambers, a bedroom with windows overlooking nameless mountains, a bathing room with a pool fed by hot springs, and a nursery, dust-covered but still containing a cradle carved from dark wood. "This was for my daughter," Lucian said quietly from the doorway. 400 years ago. She lived 6 days. Her name was Elena." Thalia turned, seeing the grief still living in his eyes after 4 centuries. "I'm sorry." "So am I." He stepped into the room, ran his hand over the cradle. "But now it seems right, that this room should have life in it again. What if our baby doesn't survive either?" Talia's voice caught. Lucian crossed to her, placed his hands on her shoulders. "You are not vampire. You're human. You carry life in you, warmth, heartbeat. If anyone can bring a hybrid child into this world and keep her breathing, it's you." The baby kicked against his palm as if agreeing. The next day, Thalia explored, room by room, floor by floor. In a tower library, she found a slim journal bound in cracked leather. Observations on the hybrid child. Elena Moreau, year of her birth, 1247. Year of her death, 1658. Talia's hands shook as she read about capabilities beyond either species. Walking in sunlight, healing mortal wounds, compelling minds, but also loneliness. 30 years of being hunted, 400 years of being alone. The entry ended with a clipped letter. "My name was Elena Moreau. I was the first, the only. I lived 400 years, and I was alone for every one of them. If another like me is born, tell them this. Their existence is not the abomination, the world that cannot accept them." Thalia pressed the journal to her chest, feeling her baby kick in response to a story told across 700 years. She was still holding it when she found the second document in Lucian's study, a letter from the Crimson Court, recent. Section 7, Clause 3 forbids vampire-human unions. The penalty is execution for both parties and immediate termination of any resulting offspring. You have 30 days to eliminate the human and the hybrid. Addendum. Witch hunter specialists have developed a spell to remove the hybrid from the mother's womb without requiring full-term gestation. The procedure will commence on the new moon. Dated 3 weeks ago, the new moon was in 8 days. They were coming to cut her baby out while she was still alive. Before Thalia could find Lucian, the ward alarm screamed. Not sound, pressure. The torches flared. The symbols carved into walls began to glow. Red light from the north, silver light from the south. Two forces approaching from different directions. Thalia ran through corridors, clutching the letters, her baby kicking in protest. She found Lucian in the great hall, standing before the massive doors. Lucian? I know. His voice was tight. One sister I exiled, one friend I trust. Both arriving at the same time. That is not coincidence. The northern ward barrier tore. A seam appeared in the air, ragged and burning. Through it stepped a woman who looked like Lucian, the way wildfire looks like a candle. Isolde Ravencrest was taller than her brother. Her hair fell to her waist, moving on its own. Her eyes weren't silver, but gold, molten and ancient. She wore red, the color of arterial blood. Behind her stood 6 vampires in black, radiating power. Brother, Isolde's voice was silk over a blade. 312 years, and this is how you invite me home. You weren't invited. And yet, here I am. Her gold eyes found Thalia. The weight of that gaze was physical. The baby responded immediately, kicking with violence that made Thalia gasp. Isolde's expression changed. The predatory amusement drained away, replaced by reverence. She crossed the hall and knelt before Thalia. The first bloodline continues, Isolde whispered. In you. Lucian moved to Thalia's side. Don't read too much into the gesture. Isolde rose, her eyes sharp. Do you have any idea what you've created? A baby, Thalia said flatly. Isolde blinked, then looked at Lucian with impossible impression. She really doesn't know, does she? Before Lucian could respond, Isolde's voice turned serious. I didn't come to claim your child. I came to warn you. The Crimson Court has hired witch hunters, blood mages. They have a spell to extract the hybrid from her womb, alive, so they can study it before they destroy it. Thalia held up the letters. I know. I found these. They're coming in 8 days. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her. You've been exploring, Lucian said. Someone had to. Isolde's expression shifted to respect. You're more than a seamstress. I'm a woman tired of powerful people deciding my fate. Thalia met Isolde's gold gaze. You were exiled for wanting to enslave humans. Why are you here helping us? The question hung in the air. Then Isolde laughed. Sharp, genuine. Oh, I like her. I understand now why you burned your world for her. She stepped closer. You want truth? I believed humans were cattle. Lucian and I went to war over it. He won. I was exiled. But 300 years is a long time to think. She placed her hand over her heart. I was wrong. A hybrid child isn't an abomination, it's evolution. And I'm not so far gone that I can't recognize a miracle when I see it. Lucian stared at his sister. You're serious. I'm here, aren't I? Because you're my brother, and that baby is my niece, and family is the only thing that outlasts eternity. Before Lucian could respond, the southern ward barrier opened properly. Silver light flooded the hall. A woman stepped through. Copper hair, eyes like aged wine, sharp, hawk-like beauty. Behind her, 40 vampires in gray armor. Lyria Vale crossed the hall and embraced Lucian. You magnificent, suicidal, lovesick fool. Thank you for coming. Lyria turned to Thalia. You're the human. You're the friend who only tried to kill him twice. Lyria laughed. I like her. Where have you been hiding women with actual spine? Ashwood Village. No one knew her name. Their loss. Lyria gestured to her soldiers. I brought 40 fighters. Not an army, but what I could move. The court already knows, Isolde said. 9 seats voted for immediate execution. The bounty on Lucian's head was 10,000 blood diamonds. On the human, it's 5,000. On the hybrid, they're offering a council seat to whoever brings them the child's body. Thalia felt the blood drain from her face. A council seat, the highest prize in vampire society. Then we fight, Lucian said. Against the entire court? Lyria shook her head. We're outnumbered 20-1. Talia's mind raced. 9 seats voted to kill. Hunters wanted her dead. Witch hunters coming in 8 days. Nowhere to run. Unless, there's one place they can't kill us, she said quietly. 4 sets of eyes turned to her. A peace conference. There's a law, isn't there? An old one. Lucian's eyes widened. The conclave of the blood moon. Ancient treaty, Isolde said slowly. Any faction can invoke it in crisis. All parties must attend under truce. No violence. Well, it hasn't been called in 400 years, Lucian said. Because there hasn't been a reason, Thalia said. Now there is. Call the conclave. Force them to negotiate. Make them look at me, at the baby. Make them see we're not monsters. Lyria stared. You want to diplomacy your way out of a death sentence? I want to stop hiding. I'm tired of running. Tired of powerful people deciding my fate. We call the conclave. Tell our story. Make them choose. Evolution or extinction. Isolde started laughing. Your human has better political instincts than half the court. There's one problem, Lyria said. Who invokes it? It needs someone with authority. A hunter captain, a voice said from the doorway. They turned. Cassian Torin stood at the entrance. Alone. No weapons. Hands raised. Blood crusted on his temple where Thalia's stone had split the skin. I invoke the conclave of the Blood Moon, Cassian said formally, on behalf of the 7 hunter clans. I call for negotiation regarding the child of Lucian Ravencrest and Thalia Whitmore. Lucian's body shifted into fighting stance. Isolde's guards drew weapons. Why, Lucian asked. Why would you help us? Cassian's hand went to the scar on his chest. Because my great-grandmother times 20 was Alina Moreau. The first hybrid, murdered by both your people and mine. I've spent my life hunting monsters to honor her memory. He looked at Talia's belly. But watching you fight for your child, I realized I've been hunting the wrong monsters. The real abomination is the hatred that killed Alina. I won't be part of that cycle. Thalia stepped forward, away from Lucian's protective hand. She walked until she stood before Cassian. Alina left a letter, Thalia said quietly. She said her existence wasn't the abomination. The world that couldn't accept her mom. Cassian's eyes filled. She wrote that? 700 years ago. She was right. But she was alone. My daughter won't be. Because you're here. Because you chose differently. She held out her hand. Cassian stared, then slowly took it and shook. I'll send the summons. Conclave convenes in 6 days. And the witch hunters? Isolde asked. I'll handle them. They work for money. I'll offer more. As Cassian turned to leave, Lucian's voice stopped him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have to convince them. We will, Thalia said with certainty. We have to. The next 3 days blurred with preparation. Lyria's soldiers fortified defenses. Isolde's mages strengthened wards. Cassian built coalitions through hunter channels. Thalia prepared herself for standing before the most powerful supernatural beings and begging for her child's life. On the 3rd day in the library, she smelled it. Bitter almonds. So faint she almost missed it. Her tea. Old Henrik, the servant, had brought it an hour ago. The scent came from her teacup. Thalia's hand went to her belly. The baby had been kicking all morning. But now she was still. Too still. Lucian! Thalia's scream echoed through the castle. He appeared in seconds. Isolde and Lyria behind him. The tea, someone poisoned it. Lucian grabbed the cup, smelled it. His face went white. Oleander extract. For a pregnant woman. Thalia's vision swam. Her legs gave out. Lucian caught her. Get the healer, Isolde barked. Who brought the tea? Lyria demanded. Henrik. Thalia whispered, hands on her belly. Please, the baby. Lucian bit his wrist. Blood welled. Vampire blood can counteract some poisons. He pressed his bleeding wrist to her lips. She drank. The blood was cold, metallic. Wrong. But she swallowed because her baby wasn't moving. Warmth spread from her stomach. Burning. Then the baby kicked. Hard. Angry. Alive. Thalia sobbed with relief. Isolde's guards dragged Henrik in. The old servant struggled, screaming. The court paid me 10 years as a 10 years? Lucian's voice was death. They knew you'd break eventually. When she got pregnant, the price went up. How much? Thalia asked weakly. How much is my baby's life worth? 5,000 blood diamonds, enough to buy a title. To murder a child, Thalia said. You were willing to kill a baby for money. Henrik's face twisted. It's not a baby. It's an abomination that shouldn't exist. Isolde's hand closed around his throat. You confessed to attempted murder. The penalty is clear. Wait, Thalia said. Don't kill him. We need him. For what? The conclave. We need proof the court will murder a pregnant woman. His confession is proof. She looked at Henrik coldly. You're going to testify. Tell everyone what the court paid you to do. Henrik went white. They'll kill me. Should have thought of that before you poisoned a pregnant woman. Isolde smiled sharply. Lock him in the lower cells. As guards dragged Henrik away, another wave of dizziness hit Thalia. The poison was still working. The healer came, examined Thalia, administered antidotes. Finally, she straightened. The child is strong, stronger than should be possible. The poison should have killed her, but she fought it off. She'll be all right? Thalia asked. She'll be fine, but you need rest. No more excitement until after you give birth. Lucian carried Thalia to their chambers, laid her on the bed, sat beside her, holding her hand. I almost lost you, he said quietly, but you didn't. If I'd been 1 minute later, Lucian, she squeezed his hand, we're alive, all three of us. That's what matters. But as she lay there, feeling the baby kick, Thalia couldn't shake the fear. The poison had been close, too close, and the conclave was still 3 days away. 3 days to convince the world their daughter deserved to live. That night, Thalia woke to cramping, sharp, intense. She sat up, touched her stomach, felt wetness. No. She pulled back the blankets. Blood, not much, but enough. Lucian, she whispered, then louder. Lucian! He appeared instantly, saw the blood, went white. The healer came running, examined her. Her face told Thalia everything. The stress, the poison, her body can't take it. The baby is coming early. How early? Lucian demanded. 26 weeks, nearly 7 months. The child might survive, but it will be difficult. Can you stop it? I can slow it, buy you a few days, but the baby is coming, whether we're ready or not. Thalia's hands went to her belly. The cramping intensified. Her daughter was coming. In the middle of enemies and poison and war, before the conclave could protect them, her daughter was coming now. And Thalia had no idea if either of them would survive. The healer's potions bought them 2 days. 2 days of bed rest and fear and cramping that came and went like waves. 2 days of Thalia's body trying to expel a child who wasn't ready. On the morning of the 3rd day, the conclave delegates began to arrive. They came through ward barriers under flags of truce that glowed with ancient enchantment. 53 vampires representing 9 council seats, each dressed in their bloodline colors, moving with predatory grace. 28 hunters came next, 5 major clans, tactical gear beneath ceremonial robes, crosses and silver weapons visible despite the truce, faces hard, suspicious. Among them, Cassian Torin, his temple scarred from Thalia's stone. He caught her watching from the window and I nodded. I kept my word. They're all here, Lucian said, hand on her shoulder. Every faction that wants us dead. Not all want us dead, Thalia said. Another cramp hit. She breathed through it. Some just need convincing. A stronger cramp doubled her over. Lucian caught her, face white. That one was worse. They're getting worse. Thalia pressed her belly. The baby moved frantically. She's coming. Today. Then we cancel. Send them away. No, Thalia gripped his arm. We do this now, while they're here, while we have them trapped under truce, because if we send them away, they'll come back with armies. Thalia, I can do this. I've delivered babies in worse conditions. I can negotiate while in labor. Lucian stared, then something shifted in his expression, pride mixing with fear. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Then help me downstairs. We have a daughter to save. The great hall had been transformed. 2 rows of chairs facing a central platform. Vampires on one side, hunters on the other. 15 feet of empty marble between them. A chasm of centuries. Torches lined the walls. At the head, 3 mediator chairs. Cassian in one, Lyria in another. Isolde took the third. Every eye turned as Lucian helped Thalia to the platform. She wore a simple gray dress that didn't hide her pregnancy. Only Lucian's ring, obsidian and silver, the Raven crest. She looked like what she was, a pregnant seamstress standing before the most powerful supernatural beings in the world. A contraction hit. Thalia's hand went to her belly. She breathed, counted to 10. Let it pass. The hall was silent, watching. My name is Thalia Whitmore, she said when the pain faded. Her voice carried to every corner. 6 months ago, I was no one. A seamstress from Ashwood, the kind of person you pass without seeing. She paused, another contraction building. Then I found a stranger bleeding in the snow. I should have run, but I cut him free from silver chains, brought him to my cottage, saved his life. Her eyes found Lucian. I didn't know he was a vampire, a king. I just knew he was dying, and I couldn't walk away. Movement in the vampire section. An elderly vampire in crimson robes stood, Elder Mordain, his face carved from contempt. We know the story, Mordain said, voice like ice. Human saves vampire. They fornicate, she gets pregnant. The question is what we do about it. The child must be destroyed, a hunter spoke. gray-haired woman with scars. Hybrids are abominations. Our laws are clear. Your laws, Talia said, voice hardening, are based on fear, not fact. You've never seen a hybrid survive. You're sentencing my daughter to death based on assumptions. We've seen one survive, Mordain countered. Alina Moreau, she lived 400 years and ended her own life because existence was unbearable. Is that the future you want? Centuries of loneliness? Talia felt tears prick her eyes. Not from sadness, fury. Alina killed herself because people like you made her life unbearable. She wasn't the problem. Your hatred was. Another contraction, stronger. Thalia's knees buckled. Lucian was there, supporting her. She gripped his arm, breathed through the pain. When it passed, she looked at Mordain with burning eyes. You want to talk about what's bearable? I was dragged through my village barefoot, tied to a post, stones selected to break my bones slowly, all because I loved someone you deemed wrong. She touched her belly. The baby kicked. I was poisoned by someone the court paid, hunted by 12 men with silver crossbows. I've watched the man I loved nearly die. And through it all, I just wanted to keep my baby safe. Her voice cracked. So don't talk to me about bearable. I've borne more in 6 months than you've felt in 600 years. Silence. Then Isolde stood. The human speaks truth. I was there when the court hired Henrik, heard them discuss extraction spells, witch hunters, methods to remove the child from her womb without waiting for birth. She looked at Mordain. You weren't just going to kill the hybrid. You were going to dissect it while she watched. Gasps from both sides. Even hardliners looked uncomfortable. Is this true? Cassian demanded. Mordain's jaw clenched. Extreme measures for an extreme situation. You were going to torture a pregnant woman, Lyria said flatly. There's nothing extreme about the situation. Only your cruelty. Bring in the witness, Isolde called. Guards dragged Henrik in, broken, terrified. When commanded, he confessed everything. 10 years as a spy. The payment, the poison, the court's plans. By the time he finished, even vampire hardliners shifted uncomfortably. This is what we've become, Cassian said quietly. This is what fear has made us. We hire poisoners, plan tortures, murder pregnant women, and call it law. He stood, walked to center, pulled open his shirt to reveal the scar over his heart. My ancestor was Alina Moreau, the first hybrid, murdered by both your people and mine. I've spent my life hunting vampires to honor her memory. He looked at Talia. But I was wrong. The real abomination isn't the hybrid. It's what we did to Alina. We're repeating history. If we don't stop, we'll be at war forever. A young hunter stood. Cassian, you're asking us to ignore centuries of law. I'm asking you to choose evolution over extinction. To look at a pregnant woman fighting for her child and see not a threat, but a mother, just like your mother's. Thalia felt wetness between her legs. Not blood, water. Her water had broken. The baby was coming, now. She tried to hide it, but Lucian saw. His eyes widened. Thalia, not yet, she whispered. I have to finish. A contraction hit that nearly drove her to her knees. Different, deeper, more intense. The kind that means there's no stopping. Lucian caught her. The baby's coming. Now. The hall erupted in whispers. Mordain stood. This conclave is suspended. No. Thalia's voice cut through chaos. You wanted to see what a hybrid is? You're going to see, right here, right now. She looked at Isolde. Is there a room? Close by? The meditation chamber. Just through that door. Good. Talia straightened as much as she could. The conclave continues. You vote on my daughter's life, while I fight to bring her into a world that already wants her dead. She started toward the door, Lucian supporting her, but Mordain blocked their path. This is unprecedented, unseemly. We cannot conduct business while a woman gives birth. Talia looked up at him. Why, because it's messy? Because it reminds you that life is real and laws are just words? Get out of my way, or I swear I will have this baby on your feet. Mordain went white, stepped aside. But as Thalia passed, he drew a blade from his robes, silver, ornate, a ceremonial knife. The hybrid dies here, he said, before it takes its first breath. Everything happened at once. Lucian moved to intercept, but he was on Thalia's left. Mordain attacked from the right. Isolde lunged from her seat. Too far. Cassian drew his weapon. Wouldn't reach. But Thalia's hand had already closed around the silver letter opener Lucian had given her, tucked in her belt that morning, just in case. She pulled it free, turned, and drove it through Mordain's hand. The elder vampire screamed, dropped his blade, staggered backward, staring at the silver letter opener protruding from his palm. Black blood welling. Thalia stood there, 7 months pregnant, water broken, in active labor, and she just stabbed a 600-year-old vampire. I said, she repeated calmly, get out of my way. Lucian caught Mordain. Isolde and Cassian restrained him. Council members intervened. She attacked a council elder. He tried to murder a pregnant woman during a truce, Lyria countered. The penalty is clear. Exile. Exile? Oh, Mordain spat. You committed murder in front of 80 witnesses under the sacred truce of the Blood Moon. Your seat is forfeit. Your lands are forfeit. You'll be taken to the Arctic wastes and left there, alone for eternity. Mordain's face went ashen. Exiled to the Arctic. No blood, no warmth, just ice and darkness and silence. Forever. Please, he whispered. Not that. Kill me, but not that. Should have thought of that before you attacked a pregnant woman, Talia said. Another contraction, so strong she couldn't speak. Lucian swept her into his arms, carried her toward the meditation chamber. Clear the room. Get the healer, now. No, Talia gasped as the contraction faded. The conclave stays, they vote, while I... She couldn't finish. Another contraction, stronger, faster. The baby was coming. The meditation chamber was small, cushions on the floor, tapestries on walls. Lucian laid Thalia down. The healer rushed in. 3 more vampires who knew medicine, and one of the hunters, an older woman, a midwife. I've delivered 200 babies, the woman said gruffly. I'll not let this one die for politics. Through the open door, Talia could hear the conclave continuing. Voices raised, arguments. Cassian and Lyria trying to maintain order. Push, the healer commanded. Thalia pushed, screamed, gripped Lucian's hand. In the great hall, she heard Lyria's voice. We have before us a choice. Continue the cycle of violence that killed Alina Moreau, or choose something new, a hybrid child protected by both species. It's too dangerous, someone argued. So was gunpowder, another voice countered. So was electricity. Dangerous doesn't mean wrong. Push again, the healer said. Thalia pushed, felt the baby move, felt her body tearing, felt pain beyond pain. Transformation. Every cell reshaping to bring life. Lucian's other hand was on her belly, his face terrified, awed. I can see the head, the vampire midwife said. One more push. In the great hall, Cassian's voice rang out. I call for the vote, all in favor of protecting the hybrid child, of offering joint custody between vampire and hunter councils, of allowing this child to live and grow under our supervision. Say aye. Silence. Thalia pushed, screamed, felt something give. Aye, Cassian said first. Aye, Lyria. Aye, Isolde. Then more voices. Vampire, hunter, building like a wave. Aye, aye, aye. The baby slipped free, into the healer's hands, into the world, into silence. Thalia's heart stopped. The baby wasn't crying, wasn't making sound. Then the baby laughed. Not cried, laughed, wore joy echoing through the chamber into the great hall beyond. Every voice in the conclave stopped. The healer held up the baby. A girl. Perfect. Tiny. Eyes already open. One eye silver like her father's. One eye amber like sunlight, and she was laughing. The hunter midwife wrapped her in cloth. She's small, too small for 7 months, but strong. Talia reached out with shaking hands. The healer placed the baby in her arms. Talia looked down at her daughter for the first time. Beautiful, impossibly beautiful. Dark hair, skin that was neither pale like Lucian's nor warm like Thalia's, but luminous, like moonlight on water. And when the baby looked at her shoulder, her eyes, one silver, one amber, fixed on Thalia's face with perfect clarity. Hello, Seraphine, Talia whispered. I'm your mother, and I fought the whole world to bring you here. Lucian knelt beside them, his hand trembling as he touched his daughter's tiny fingers. She gripped his finger with surprising strength. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Real tears, the first in 600 years. From the great hall, footsteps, the entire conclave moving toward the chamber. Coming to see, to witness, to judge. They filled the doorway, 80 faces, some hostile, some curious, some afraid. Thalia held Seraphine up. You wanted to see what a hybrid is? Look, she's a baby. She's perfect. And she's laughing because she doesn't know you wanted her dead. She's laughing because she's alive. Sunlight was streaming through the window. Morning had come. And as the light touched Seraphine's skin, Something happened. The baby began to glow, not brightly, just soft luminescence, like dawn breaking. And where the sunlight touched her, she didn't burn. She smiled wider, reached for the light with tiny hands. A vampire in the crowd gasped. Impossible. Sunlight should kill her, Isolde said quietly. But it doesn't, because she's not fully vampire. She's something new. Cassian pushed through the crowd, knelt before Thalia. And when he looked at Seraphine, his eyes were wet. She has Alina's eyes, he whispered. The amber, that's what the record said. He looked up at Talia. My ancestor lived 400 years in hiding. Alone. Hunted. But your daughter. He touched Seraphine's tiny hand. Your daughter will grow up with protectors. From both sides. I swear it. One by one, the council members knelt. Even the hunters, even the vampires who'd voted for death. They knelt before a newborn baby who'd done what no one else could. She'd made enemies see each other as people. Lyria stepped forward. The vote is complete. 80 delegates, 80 votes. The decision is unanimous. Seraphine Ravencrest Whitmore will live under the protection of the Joint Council. She will be raised with knowledge of both species, and any who threaten her will face both vampire and hunter justice. She looked at the assembled crowd. This child is the treaty. Living proof that our species can coexist. The war ends here. With her. Talia pulled Seraphine close, felt Lucian's arms around them both, and for the first time in 6 months, she let herself believe they might actually survive this. The first Dawn Day celebration filled Ravenhold's grounds with music and light, humans and vampires dancing together. Hunters teaching vampire children how to track. Vampire mages teaching human children simple spells. Seraphine, now 15 months old, toddled through the crowd on unsteady legs, chasing a butterfly, laughing when it flew just out of reach. She walked in full sunlight, played with vampire children in shade, moved between both worlds with the ease of someone who didn't know they were supposed to be separate. Her eyes, one silver, one amber, caught the light as she turned. Thalia watched from the stone bench, Lucian beside her, hand in hers. The reports came in, Lucian said, from Ashwood Village. And? Elder Dorian was arrested. The villagers testified against him. Every single one. Old Marta from the bakery went first. He got 20 years in prison. Talia felt something loosen in her chest. Justice. And the law? Changed. The village council voted unanimously. The old law about unwed mothers has been removed. And in its place, Lucian smiled, someone carved "Love is not a crime" above the council door. No one knows who, but it's there. Permanent. Seraphine made a cooing sound, reached for her father. Lucian took her with practiced ease, held her against his chest. And Mordain? Exiled to the Arctic as decreed. Lyria sent confirmation. He's alone forever. Exactly what he deserves. Talia nodded, looking out at the gardens. Cassian came by yesterday. Did he tell you? About the integration program? Training hunters and vampires together. It's ambitious. It's necessary. Talia stood, stretched. Her body had healed from the birth, though she still tired easily. If Seraphine's going to grow up in a world without war, someone has to build it. He asked me to be on the oversight committee. What did you say? I said yes, with one condition. You have to be on it too. Talia turned. Me? I'm not. You're the mother of the first hybrid to survive. The woman who negotiated a treaty while in labor. The person who threw rocks at both villagers and hunters to protect the people she loves. Lucian stood, Seraphine held securely. You're exactly who should be on that committee. Before Talia could respond, Isolde appeared in the garden doorway. You have visitors, the entire council, all of them. Talia and Lucian exchanged glances. What do they want? To see her, to meet the child they voted to protect, to ask for your blessing. Our blessing for what? They want to make Seraphine's birthday a holiday, a day of peace between species. They're calling it Dawn Day, the day the war ended, the day a child brought light. Talia felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, from the weight of it, her daughter becoming a symbol, becoming hope. Tell them yes, she said quietly. Tell them we'd be honored. The council filed into the garden, 53 vampires, 28 hunters, no longer enemies. Not quite friends, but something in between, something new. They formed a circle around the bench. One by one they approached, offered gifts, blessings, promises. Cassian came last. He knelt before Seraphine, who was falling asleep in Lucian's arms. I brought something for you, little one. He pulled out a medallion, Alina's family crest. This belonged to my ancestor, the first hybrid. I want you to have it, so you'll remember. You're not the first, but you're the first to be loved by both sides. He placed the medallion around Seraphine's tiny neck. She yawned, smiled in her sleep. Her eyes, one silver, one amber, flickered beneath closed lids. As the sun set, Lucian stood, carried Seraphine to the edge of the garden where the last rays of light were fading. He stood there, in the dying sun, with his daughter in his arms. And he didn't burn. Thalia joined him, arm around his waist. She's protecting you. No, Lucian said softly. She's showing me what's possible. I spent 600 years in darkness. She brought me dawn. Below them, the valley spread out, lights beginning to appear in distant villages. Ravenhold's wards glowing softly, and beyond the mountains, the world. A world that had tried to kill them, that had sentenced them to death for loving. A world they'd changed. They said I was worthless, Thalia whispered. A seamstress from nowhere, invisible, forgettable. And now? And now I'm the mother of the Dawn Child, the woman who changed the world, the one who proved that love isn't a crime, it's salvation. Lucian pulled her close, kissed her temple. You were never worthless. The world just didn't know how to see you. Seraphine stirred, opened her eyes, one silver, one amber. She looked at her parents and smiled, that pure, uncalculated baby smile that meant nothing except joy. And somewhere in a meadow in France where ashes had scattered 700 years ago, Alina Moreau's story found an ending. Not in death, not in loneliness, but in this moment, this family, this proof that what killed her didn't have to kill everyone. The monsters were still there, the hatred, the fear, the laws that said some loves were wrong. But so was this baby girl with one silver eye and one amber eye who laughed in sunlight and brought her father out of darkness. This seamstress who'd fought the world and won. This vampire king who'd learned that mercy was stronger than law. They were proof that monsters were made, not born. And that love, real love, the kind that cuts through silver chains and throws stones at hunters and stands before councils 7 months pregnant and demands to be heard. That love unmade them all. A commotion at the garden gates. Thalia looked up to see a carriage arriving, the Ashwood village crest on the door. Her heart stuttered. After everything, she hadn't expected. The door opened. Old Marta stepped out. Then Jacob the blacksmith's son, the miller, the baker, a dozen villagers who'd watched her nearly die. Marta approached slowly, eyes red from crying. We came to say we're sorry, the old woman said, and to see if the stories are true, that you survived, that the baby... Seraphine chose that moment to toddle over. She looked up at Marta with curious eyes. One silver, one amber. Human and vampire. Both and neither. Baby, Seraphine said, one of her first words, pointing at herself. Marta dropped to her knees. Oh, child, forgive us. Forgive us for what we almost did. There's nothing to forgive, Thalia said quietly. She stood, helped Marta up. You were following laws you'd been taught your whole life, but you changed them. That's what matters. You chose to be better. The village wants you to know, Jacob said. We've started a fund for young mothers. Any woman who needs help. We call it the Thalia Fund, so no one else ever faces what you faced. Thalia's throat closed. She couldn't speak. Lucian stood, Seraphine in his arms. You're welcome here. All of you. For Dawn Day. For any day. The war is over. For everyone. As the villagers joined the celebration, as vampire and human and hunter all mixed together under the setting sun, Thalia felt Lucian's arm around her shoulders. We did it, he whispered. Against every law, every threat, every impossible odd. We did it. No, Thalia corrected. She looked at Seraphine, who was laughing, as Cassian tossed her gently in the air, as Isolde stood nearby ready to catch, as Lyria showed her a ward symbol that glowed in response to the baby's touch. She did it. We just loved her enough to let her. The sun set fully, stars began to appear. And in the garden of Ravenhold Castle, where a vampire king and a seamstress had once thought they'd have to choose between love and survival, their daughter played. She would grow up without knowing what it meant to be an abomination, would never understand that her existence had once been illegal, would live in a world that celebrated her instead of stoning her. She would grow up free, loved by both sides, protected by both worlds. The living proof that the only abomination was the hatred that tried to kill her. And when she was old enough, when she asked her mother how they'd survived, Thalia would tell her the truth. They'd thrown stones back. They'd fought. They'd stood before the most powerful beings in the world and demanded to be seen. They'd refused to be invisible. They'd refused to be silent. They'd refused to let fear win, and they'd loved each other, fiercely, completely, without apology. That, in the end, was what saved them all. Love without permission, love without apology, love that looked at 600 years of law and said, I choose this person anyway. That kind of love could change the world. That kind of love could bring the dawn.